Okay, so I know I'm pretty late on covering this event because it happened 13 hours ago, and usually I try and cover stuff as soon as possible, and I feel like recently I'm kind of known as the person that covers stuff the hour it happens. However, I couldn't today for reasons. One, this completion happened when I was asleep at like half 2 in the morning for me, and I had stuff to do in the morning today as well, so I just couldn't get around to it until now. But I am still trying to upload this as soon as possible, so here we are. I can cover it now. Let's talk about it. So you may have noticed that recently we saw Ashley Wave Trials get raised to 12. It was 15 before, now it's 12. And this change was due to a certain record here. As you can see, nickname beat the level. This is the first ever victor of Ashley Wave Trials, besides obviously the verifier Zoink. I saw this Twitter post recently that was talking about we're finally breaking away from this weird trend that's been happening in the community where these levels that get placed on the list go like years or a lot of months without getting a single victor. And yeah, I agree because in the past like pretty much 24 hours we've seen Orbit and Ashley Wave Trials get their first victors. Today we're going to cover this achievement. We're gonna go over nickname spots on the level. However, I first want to make this video to kind of just show the recent history on progress on this level. Because Ashley Wave Trials has had a very, very intense race for the first victor title. We haven't really seen this in recent times because I feel like a lot of achievements is just one person getting massive progress and no one can compete. It wasn't like that this time, and so I want to cover everything that happened with this level progress-wise for the last couple months so we can understand where this completion came from. Now, I would say the start of the recent history with this level is Aniru here, who was able to get Ashley Wave Trials in 3 runs after over 100,000 attempts 4 months ago. And this run included a run of 56 to 100, and this is a new best for Aniru since the 63 to 100 run that happened a couple months prior. Now, Aniru is like the funniest channel ever because there's just this Ashley Wave Child progress, and then it's just a bunch of like last click deaths pretty much here. Nelv 99%, Renovant 98%, Cold Sweat 98. These have to be done on purpose. This is just too funny. But yeah, pretty much this was the first major progress, I would say. Obviously, there were some other people beforehand, but this is when we started to really see a bunch of people take up the level. The reason for the absence is because Ashley Wave Trials went ages without getting a rate, because Zoink verified it with CBF, and so it just couldn't be rated until RobTop actually started allowing CBF and implemented his own version of it. So it means that these completions started getting rated, and we saw more and more of them, and eventually it got to Ashley Wave Trials, and we did see it finally get a deserved rate. And this opened the door for much more progress, and the next person we're going to talk about who's in line is Cruel. Cruel is a very underrated player who is mainly focused on Ashley Wave Trials for much of their recent history with the game. 3 months ago, a 56 to 100 run was achieved without CBF, and then Ashley Wave Trials in 3 runs happened a month ago. However, this doesn't really matter as much because 3 weeks ago, Cruel was able to get 2 runs on Ashley Wave Trials, which at the time, this was the first recorded case of a 2-run completion. And then we saw a 54% run happen 13 days ago. And obviously this is from 0, so it's very, very impressive, but also Cruel had Ashley turned on in the completion. Well, it wasn't a completion, you know what I mean, but pretty much as you can see, Ashley is enabled during the playtime. Most players who actually try and go for this level turn Ashley off because she obstructs your vision, which obviously is going to make the level harder. However, this run was done with her enabled, so through a decent amount of gameplay, she is there blocking your vision, and so it just makes this even more impressive. And nowadays, Cruel is doing other Ashley-related stuff, as we saw Cruel verified the hardest game, which is a remake. And after Cruel, we saw Doobs pick this level up, and I would say this is the most famous individual who's picked up the level, at least in terms of the videos themselves. because Dubes 2 weeks ago was able to get Ashley Wave Trials in 3 runs, and he did title it as top 15, so I'm gonna assume to believe that Dubes currently thinks that this level is around top 15 on the list. However, Dubes is very, very, very wave carried, so it makes sense that he would find something like this around top 15. But he tends to watch these videos, so maybe he'll give his difficulty take in the comments here, so look out for that. And then 2 weeks ago as well, he was able to get 65%, which is list percent, which I believe this is the first recorded list percent. I may be wrong with that, but from what I know, this is the first ever time we got a list percent run in Ashley Wave Trials, and then 12 days ago, he was able to achieve 77% and 39 to 100. The level was taking a bit of toll on Dubes, which is why I think we didn't see much progress, because even though he was doing this level impressively fast, like, these runs are happening after like 15,000 attempts, which is nothing for a level this difficult. But Dubes had the problem where he kind of felt demotivated once other people started playing the level. I think this is mostly because Dubes has in recent times been popping off and improving a lot. However, he does have a problem with, well, it's not really a problem, but he never really finishes his achievements. And so on top of wanting to, finally actually finish something and get 100% on something and not just be really good via progress, he also felt like because he sank so much time into this and people expected him to be the first victor, that he kind of had to live up to that, but it was hard when these really pro players were going for it. In fact, the first progress video we saw, he mentioned that he was in a little friendly race with Z Levi, and I believe Z Levi wasn't that, competitive with it. He wasn't trying that much because there isn't really any video on his channel from what I know on this level. But 10 days ago, he did make a post saying, "So nickname is going for Ashley Wave Trials now, so probably I won't get first victor. I want you guys to know I'm really trying, and I'm sorry in advance." So yeah, there was a lot of pressure here, and obviously, sadly, we now know what happened. Nickname was the first victor, which is kind of crazy when you realize that that means that Nickname really only played this level for 10 days. But yeah, that's pretty much Dubes' story with the level so far. I think that Dubes will continue to play the level. I don't think he will be dropping it. However, maybe this break might continue a bit now that he doesn't have the pressure of needing to be first victor. Now, here's a player called the Golden Bow, who is a super underrated player. He was actually linked in the description of Nickname's verification, saying to shout him out because he has been making major progress on the level that got unrecognized. To put into perspective, we saw a couple Dubes videos on the progress of Ashley Wave Trials hit over 40,000 views, compared to these progresses of 65 and 88% that happened 3 days ago and 9 days ago, and these are both around 500 views, which for something this difficult is nothing. I was freaking out over a potential top 20 verification having less than this amount of views, so the fact that something that is this much in progress also being really underrated is just super sad to see, because it means there's a bunch of these really high profile players who are really cracked at the game, but yet these just don't get much attention. Because it's not like Bo hasn't seen attention before. He was the verified Viper in UFO, you might know that level. It is a UFO only level, it's pretty cool, and yeah, that got 85,000 views, very popular, but sadly, this just got no attention. And he's a crack player, he's beaten to Hallucination, Cosmos, Acheron, this is his hardest. Defeated Circles as well. These are just some really hard stuff. 57% on Tidal Wave a year ago, by the way. A year ago. Even if that happened today, people would be talking about it. So, yeah, I just kind of feel sad for him. But as we know, Nickname was the one to eventually verify it. 8 days ago, he posted his insanely quick progress of getting 34 to 164. And then 8 days later, just over a week, he has beat the level and became its first victor. Now, this is to be expected. This is the same guy who has got 86% on a level that is debatably harder than Tidal Wave, or if not around Orbit in difficulty. This is the same person that can fluke levels as hard as Avernus from stuff like 62. This guy is really good at the game. To show how cracked Nickname is, if we look at his Twitter account, and you can see that he recently posted Ashley Wave Trials 100% first victor, he got 89% and then 20 minutes later beat it. That is incredible consistency in just 20 minutes. If you want attempt count, this is 15,000 attempts, which for a level that's nearly top 10, 15k, are you serious? That's what Dubes took to get like list percent, and you're doing it in 15k. That is crazy. And look at this, like after the 89 run, we just had a couple 70% runs, and then a couple 60 deaths, and that's it. You just beat it. That's incredible. So yeah, you can see here his opinion is 10 to 13, which is harder than where it is currently. And then there you go, it was placed bang in the middle of that estimate at 12, which kind of makes me concerned because it makes me think that they're just basing off of Nickname's opinion, because that's just the middle value of what Nickname gave. But I'm a bit, yeah, the reason I'm a bit concerned about that is because Nickname isn't the only person that has progressed on this level. There are so many other people who are currently having major progression on the level or are very close to beating it themselves. And I feel like they should have a say in it as well because, you know, just because Nickname completed it doesn't mean that these people's scores are invalid. They all probably have a very good estimate on this level's difficulty. Also, it's not very learny, it's very much raw wave gameplay, so they can probably have an opinion on this level that's pretty truthful much earlier than any other level. But I mean, it's still fair. I think that this probably was underrated. Zoink always underrates his achievements, and this was an entirely wave focused level, so it was expected that it would be actually harder than initially thought. Honestly, I'm surprised it didn't go above Silent Club Step, but that's besides the point. It is 12. That is very difficult. And there really isn't any much more to say here. This is just incredible that Nickname was able to beat it. Congratulations. And I hope that everyone who I've mentioned in this video can eventually finish off this level. But yeah, don't much more to say. Thanks for watching, and peace.